Hey everyone, and welcome back to Love Hackers. I'm Alex Carter, and this is your daily dose of dating advice.
I'm Sophie Tanaka.
And we're your hosts, here to help you navigate all the ups and downs of dating. You guys have been asking for a deep dive into texting,
Yeah.
especially like how to text a girl for the first time,
Yeah.
how to spark that attraction. So that's exactly what we're diving into today.
We're breaking it all down, all that expert advice on how to craft those initial messages, and it applies whether you met online or in person.
Yeah.
And trust me, those first few texts, they can really make or break your chances.
Okay, so no pressure on that first text, right? But seriously though, why is that first text so important?
Well, you can think of it like your opening line, right? It sets the tone for the entire interaction. You want to come across as confident and engaging. Interesting, right off the bat. And now if you're texting a girl whose number you got directly from her, so maybe you met at a bar or through a friend, that's what we call a warm prospect. She's already shown interest by giving you her digits.
So if she gave you her number,
Yeah.
you're already off to a good start.
Right.
Right. That makes sense.
Exactly. But even with a warm prospect, there's some common mistakes that guys make that can kind of sabotage things right out the gate.
Yeah.
One of the biggest. Overthinking it. You don't need to write a novel for your first text.
Oh, I'm so guilty of that.
Yeah.
Staring at my phone for like an hour trying to come up with the perfect opener. So what's the secret? What should that first text look like?
Just keep it casual, direct, and to the point.
Okay.
Something as simple as, "Hey, Anna, it's Mike. It was great meeting you today."
Yeah.
That can be incredibly effective. You acknowledged the meeting, reminded her who you are, and you kept it brief. It's confident, but not overbearing.
So simple,
Yeah.
yet so effective. I
Mhm.
like it. What do you think makes that example so good?
I think it avoids overwhelming her with too much information, too many questions right away.
Right.
You're just reestablishing that connection, opening the door for further conversation. And remember, the goal of this first text is just to get a response. Keep the momentum going.
Right. You're not trying to propose marriage in that first text.
Exactly.
They're just planting a seed.
Right.
So now that we've nailed that first text, what's next? How do we keep the conversation going
Right.
and actually spark some attraction?
This is where things get really interesting. You want to move beyond just exchanging pleasantries, and you start building that real connection.
Yeah.
And the key here is to ask engaging, open-ended questions. Questions that can't just be answered with a simple yes or no.
Okay. So instead of did you have a good day, which she could just answer yes, I could say what was the highlight of your day?
Exactly. That gets her thinking, talking, which is what you want. Plus, it shows that you're genuinely interested in her and her life.
Makes sense. And then you can use those questions to learn more about her interests and find common ground.
Absolutely. Shared interests, those are gold,
Yeah.
especially in the early stages of dating. Gives you something to connect over, something to talk about, helps you build that rapport.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. It's not just about asking questions.
Oh.
It's about how you respond to her answers.
So it's not just like a Q&A session.
No.
You have to actually engage with what she's saying.
Exactly. One really effective technique is what's called conversation threading. It basically means recognizing the different threads within her response, and you kind of pull on one to keep that conversation going.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of what that looks like in action?
Okay, so let's say you ask her about her favorite hobbies, and she says, "I love hiking, trying new restaurants, and spending time with my dog."
Right.
Instead of just saying cool or asking another unrelated question, you could pick up on one of those threads. Run with it.
So I love hiking too. What's your favorite trail around here?
Yes.
Or, ooh, I'm always looking for new restaurants to try. What's your go-to spot?
Perfect. You're showing that you're actually listening, that you're genuinely interested in what she has to say. And by focusing on just one thread at a time, you can create a more focused, engaging conversation.
I love that tip. Conversation threading. I'm going to remember that one. So we've talked about keeping the conversation flowing, finding common ground. Now, how do we start injecting some attraction into those texts?
This is where things get a little more strategic.
Okay.
And one of the most powerful tools you have is the concept of scarcity. It's all about demonstrating that your time is valuable, that you're not just sitting around waiting for her to text back all day.
Scarcity. Diamonds are scarce. Wait, are you telling me to play hard to get?
Not necessarily. It's more about striking a balance.
Okay.
You don't want to play too hard to get, but you don't want to seem overly eager either. Remember, you have a life outside of texting her, and that's attractive. You have hobbies, friends, work, a whole world that doesn't revolve around her phone.
So how do we show that without, like, being rude or dismissive?
It's subtle things,
Yeah.
like not always being immediately available to text back.
Right.
Or sometimes, keeping your responses a little shorter. And even mentioning things that you're doing in your text, like heading out to catch a movie with friends, talk later, things like that.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So it's not about ignoring her or, like, playing games. It's about showing her that you have a fulfilling life
Hmm.
and that she's not the center of your universe.
Right.
And that's actually more attractive than being constantly at her beck and call.
Exactly. It creates that little bit of intrigue, makes her want to learn more about you. And speaking of being attractive, when it comes time to actually ask her out, assertiveness is key.
Assertive, not aggressive, right?
Exactly. You're confident in what you want, and you're not afraid to go for it. Don't beat around the bush. Don't be wishy-washy.
So instead of saying, maybe we can hang out sometime,
Yeah.
I should be more like, hey, I'd love to take you to that new Italian place on Friday night. What do you think?
Now you're talking. That's assertive, specific, and it shows that you're taking the initiative. But remember, while assertiveness is important, you also want to make sure she feels comfortable.
Okay, so how do we balance assertiveness with, like, making her feel comfortable and safe? That seems tricky.
It's about reading the situation, being respectful of her boundaries. Pay attention to her cues and how she's responding to your texts. And if you're ever unsure, it's always best to err on the side of caution. Now, the expert advice we were looking at, it also talks about these 5 stages of texting a girl. Think of it like a roadmap for your interactions.
Okay, let's unpack this. What are these 5 stages? And how can they help us, like, navigate this whole texting game?
We've actually already touched on a few of them. First is reinitiating contact, which is basically that first text we talked about. Second is building investment, where you're increasing the frequency and intensity of your texts just to gauge her interest.
So, like, mirroring her energy and seeing if she's reciprocating.
Exactly. Then we move on to stage 3, building attraction. This is where your charm and wit come into play. Flirting, teasing, keeping it lighthearted and fun.
Got it. Then what?
Stage 4 is all about building comfort. Sharing more personal details, maybe connecting on social media, making her feel comfortable with the idea of actually meeting up.
Okay, so it's like building trust and rapport. Makes sense. What's the final stage?
The final stage is the big one, asking her out. But remember, these stages aren't always linear.
What do you mean?
Well, sometimes you might need to revisit earlier stages, just depending on how the interaction's going.
Right.
For example, if you feel like the attraction is waning, you might need to inject some more playfulness or humor
Right.
back into your texts.
Yeah.
It's all about reading the situation, adapting your approach accordingly.
So it's more like a dance than a straight line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're constantly reading the situation, adapting your approach, and moving things forward. And that brings us to the end of part 1 of our deep dive into texting.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into those 5 stages and give you even more actionable tips for creating that spark and securing that first date. See you soon.
Welcome back to part 2 of our deep dive into texting.
We just left off talking about the 5 stages of texting a girl.
Right, like a roadmap for those interactions.
Yeah.
We already covered the first 2. Reinitiating contact and building investment.
Right.
Now let's dive into stage 3, building attraction.
Okay, this is where things get fun. So
Yeah.
how do we actually create that spark through text?
Well, think about what attracts you to someone. It's usually a combination of things, right?
Yeah.
Their personality, their sense of humor, intelligence, confidence.
Absolutely.
And I guess we need to kind of convey those same qualities through our texts.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's not about bragging or trying to be someone you're not.
Right.
It's about letting your true personality shine through in a way that's engaging, playful. This is where flirting comes in.
Okay, I'm listening. Give me some flirting tips.
Flirting through text is all about being lighthearted and playful, a little bit suggestive.
Okay.
Think back to the article. It gave a great example of a flirty text, something like, "I'm trying to be productive, but I keep getting distracted thinking about your smile."
Ooh, I like that. It's playful, complimentary, creates a little tension. But what if you're not naturally a flirty person?
Yeah.
Any tips for us, like less smooth operators out there?
I think the key is to kind of step outside your comfort zone a little bit. Don't be afraid to be a little cheeky or tease her gently, you know? The article also mentioned using emojis strategically to add a touch of playfulness. emotion to your text.
Emojis, I could do emojis. But seriously, though, it's about finding a style of flirting that feels authentic to you. You don't want to force it. It'll come across as unnatural.
Exactly. Now, once you've sparked some attraction, it's time to move on to stage 4, building comfort.
Okay, so we flirted, we've laughed.
Yes.
Now we need to, build a deeper connection.
Right. This stage is all about making her feel comfortable, safe with you. It's about moving beyond the superficial, and you start sharing more personal details about your lives.
So, like what? Should I start pouring my heart out, telling her my deepest, darkest secrets?
Hold your horses. You don't want to overwhelm her. Start by sharing small things, relatable things. Talk about your passions, your fears, your dreams. The article suggested finding common ground. Like, share a funny, embarrassing story from your past.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Everyone loves a good story. And it shows her that you're human. You're not afraid to be a little vulnerable.
Exactly. This stage is also a good time to connect on social media.
Yeah.
Gives her a chance to see another side of you, get a better sense of who you are.
And it gives you an opportunity to, learn more about her, too. You can see what she's passionate about, what makes her laugh, what kind of life she leads.
Right. It's all about building that foundation of trust and rapport.
Mm.
Before you move on to the final stage, asking her out.
Ooh, the moment of truth. So we've built rapport, we've created that attraction, we've made her feel comfortable. How do we seal the deal? How do we get that date?
Well, remember what we talked about earlier. Assertiveness is key.
Right. Be clear, be confident, don't beat around the bush.
Exactly. But it's also important to make sure the timing is right. You want to make sure you've built enough momentum.
Right.
And that she's showing clear signs of interest before you pop the question.
So how do we know if the timing's right? What signs should we be looking for?
Pay attention to how she's responding to your texts.
Okay.
Is she engaging in the conversation?
Yeah.
Is she asking you questions? Is she mirroring your energy and enthusiasm? If so, that's a good sign that she's enjoying the interaction.
Okay.
And that she might be open to taking things to the next level.
Okay, so we're getting good vibes.
Mm-hmm.
She's reciprocating our energy. It's time to make our move. How do we craft that perfect date proposal text?
Well, the article had some great examples of assertive date proposals. Something like, I'm really enjoying our conversation. I'd love to continue it in person over coffee or drinks. Are you free sometime this week? Or, hey, I'm free Friday night. I'd love to take you to that new jazz club you mentioned. What do you think?
Those are great examples. They're assertive. They're specific. And they give her the opportunity to, accept or decline without feeling pressured. But what if she says no?
Don't take it personally. There could be any number of reasons why she might not be ready or able to go on a date with you. Maybe she's busy. Maybe she's not looking for anything serious.
Yeah.
Or maybe she's just not feeling it. The important thing is to be respectful of her decision and move on gracefully.
That's a really important point. Rejection is part of the dating game. It's not always going to be yes.
Right.
And that's okay.
Exactly. So those are the 5 stages of texting a girl. Remember, they're not always linear. And you might need to revisit earlier stages depending on how the interaction is going.
It's all about reading the situation, adapting your approach,
Yeah.
going with the flow.
Right.
This has been super helpful. I feel like I'm finally starting to understand the art of texting.
I'm glad to hear it. And remember, the most important thing is to be yourself. Be confident. And have fun with it.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, texting is just a tool to get to that first date
Yes.
where the real magic happens. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll wrap up our deep dive into texting. And we'll leave you with some final thoughts and actionable takeaways.
See you soon.
Welcome back to the final part of our texting deep dive.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from crafting that all-important first text to navigating those 5 stages of a texting interaction.
We talked about being engaging, asking open-ended questions, flirting, building comfort, being assertive, and so much more.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
But the good news is texting gets easier with practice. The more you do it, the more natural it will become.
That's right. And remember, these are just guidelines, not hard and fast rules.
Right.
The most important thing is to be yourself and let your personality shine through in those texts.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, the goal of texting is to connect with someone on a deeper level and hopefully spark enough interest to lead to a date.
And speaking of dates, let's talk about what happens after that text conversation has run its course. What are some things to keep in mind as you transition from texting to that first date?
One thing that's really important is to manage expectations. Remember, texting is just a small window into someone's personality. You're only getting a glimpse of who they are through those digital exchanges.
So don't build them up in your mind too much before you've even met them in person.
Exactly. It's so easy to get caught up in the excitement of a great text conversation. But real-life chemistry, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah,
Go into that first date with an open mind and just be prepared for things to be a little different than you expected.
that's such a good point. I think it's also important to remember that texting is just one piece of the dating puzzle.
Right.
It's not the be-all and end-all. There's so many other factors that contribute to, like, traction and compatibility.
Absolutely. Things like body language, shared values, common interests, emotional connection.
Yeah.
Those things can't be fully conveyed through text messages.
So while texting is a great tool for, like, sparking initial interest and getting that first date,
Right.
it's important to remember it's just the beginning of the journey.
Exactly. And as you move from texting to dating, remember all those key principles that we talked about today. Be confident, be engaging, be assertive, and most importantly, be yourself.
This has been an amazing deep dive into the world of texting.
It has.
I feel like I've learned so much, and I hope you have too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation today, and I hope these insights empower you to approach texting with confidence and authenticity.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our future dating advice.
Yes.
And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us what stood out to you the most from today's deep dive. What will you try differently in your own texting?
We love hearing from you guys.
Yeah.
And as always, we're here to help you navigate the exciting and sometimes confusing world of dating.
That's right. Until next time, keep those texts flowing and keep those sparks flying. I'm Alex Carter.
And I'm Sophie Tanaka.
And this is Love Hackers, signing off.